Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. I'm Rapha'Yah, and we are going to go ahead and start off this Shabbat, amazing Shabbat, to start the Torah portion, which is called Waethanan. Waethanan happens to be when Moshe asked the Creator Yahweh to let him enter into the Promised Land. And don't want to take too much of time, but we are going to go into the meaty into this Torah portion. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so you can get the latest production, which we are always doing it. Please subscribe so you can get anything that we have available in our repertoire of videos. So let's just go ahead and jump into the Torah portion. Waethanan means, and I beseech Yahweh. So let's go ahead and start off the book of Devarim, or Deuteronomy chapter 3 verse 23. Then Waethanan, I pleaded with Yahweh, Ye Almighty, you have begun to reveal your greatness to your servant, to your strong arm. For what other God or Elohim or demons are there in heavens or on earth that they can do the works or deeds of power that you can do? This is the something that Moshe is actually pleading the Creator to do something, but at the same time, he's asking the Creator to let him into the Promised Land. The word Hanan is transliterated like this, means compassion, pity, to bend down on kindness and favor bestowed upon, implore. Let's look at an example of this word. Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 42 verse 21, they said to each other, we are in fact guilty with regard to our brother. He was afflicted and Hanan, and begged for us. See that? And we saw it and we did not want to listen. Therefore, now this affliction has come upon us. We see a very great example here how Judah is explaining to Joseph of what they did to Joseph, because they don't know that the person in front of them, the Pharaoh, the second of Pharaoh, he happens to be Joseph, and he's telling the story of how they, how he begged, and the word is Hanan. So you see how this implore to the Creator, implore to someone, has this impact. Let's getting a little bit more. In the Aramaic version of this verse, chapter 3, verse 25, please let me across and see the good land that is in the other side of the Jordan, this good mountain, and the Lebanon. The Lebanon is another word for the Beit HaMikdash, or the temple. If we remember how the temple was built, we know that it was white, and the word is Laban, or Lebanon. Let me give you another verse of what we're talking about. Isaiah, or Yeshayahu, chapter 1, verse 18. And come now, says Yahweh, let us reason this together. Though your sins be like scarlet, I will make them white. The word is Laban, as snow. Though they may be red like crimson, they shall be white as wool. See how important it is when we see the context of this word, Leban or Lebanon? We see something very amazing, how the Hebrew comes alive when we know the meaning of it. The word Leban means white, whiten, break, to make bricks. The word Hanan, or favor, has the gematria of 515, which means a beg or favor. The root of that means to have pity or chanan, which is 515. The word tefillah or prayer is 515. The word ta'ach means to err, which is 515. Moshe did all this. Moshe asked the Creator for forgiveness up to 515, and up to that point, Yahweh said to Moshe, enough is enough. It comes to a certain point where the Creator can take no more, because when the Creator makes up his mind up to a certain decision that has made, we cannot say anymore. We cannot change the mind of our Creator, because he said it and it shall be done. But there is, in the case of Moshe or Moses, we see something amazing, because we will see that in this word Hanan, there is something encoded. And as we stated in this channel, the Torah effects, it has effect in everything that we do, everything that we study, everything that we practice. There is always something encoded. When we study the Torah of Yahweh, we see so many things encoded that we need to unravel. And that's what we're going to do this morning. Moshe pleaded with Yahweh 515 times. The gematria of prayer is 515 times. And each time he was denied entry into Eretz Israel, or the land of Israel. Yahweh finally said, enough is enough. Once again, we can see here how the Creator made his mind up as far as Moshe not entering into the land of Israel. And there was a reason behind it, that it has a lot to do with Mashiach that we need to see. But first, let's find out how many times Moshe erred, how many faults that he did, that Yahweh came to make up his mind like enough is enough. The first fault was in Shemot chapter 4, verse 1. Moshe answered, but I am sure they will not believe me. They will not listen to what I said, for they will say, Yahweh has not appeared to you. We can clearly see how Moshe, when Yahweh told him to go to Eretz Mizraim, or the land of Egypt, he said it straight up to Yahweh, they would not believe me. In other words, you're not enough to bring about, to free the Hebrews. And remember, if you keep reading the verse where Yahweh asked Moshe to bring his hand into his bosom and bring it out, remember that he was a leper, or sa'arat. Exactly what happened, because he did not believe. Let's go into the second fault was in 11:22 of Numbers, or Bat Mirbad. If whole herds and flocks were sacrificed to them, would this be enough? If all the fish and the seed were gathered for them, would even be enough? Yahweh answered to Moshe, has the hand of Yahweh shrunk? Now you will see if what I said will happen or not. In other words, what Moshe is implying here, and let me pause this for a moment. What Moshe is implying here in this verse is that whatever was Yahweh was bringing wasn't enough, wasn't going to complete the task of bringing about of the whole people of Israel into the land of Israel. But Yahweh says, am I not good enough for them? He was more than good enough. But yet, Moshe faltered here again. And this will be the second time. Let's go into the third time. Remember when Yahweh said to Moshe, tell the rock, chapter 20, verse 8. Let's go into, again, chapter 17, verse 5 of Shemot of Exodus. Take your rod in your hand. Take one you use to beat the river, and go. See that how Yahweh, told Moshe to do a certain task, but something happened here. 17 verse 6 of Exodus, you should strike the rock and the water should flow out of it. The people may drink. Moshe did this in the sight of the sons of Israel. But what did he do? He got upset because the people were complaining. Were always, like always, humans do. Complain. It got to a certain point where Moshe was about to pull his hair out. And he had enough. And he, to the point where he smoked the rock twice. Something that Yahweh never said it. How do we know that? Let's find out who the rock was. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 4. And they all drank the same drink of the Ruach, the Spirit of Yahweh, because they drank from the rock, same by the Ruach, the Spirit of Yahweh, which followed them. And the rock was the Mashiach. The Mashiach was the rock. The Mashiach was the one he's supposed to hit once. What is this means to you and I? Hitting that once, it implies that Mashiach had to come to die for all of us one time, once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times. Once was enough. And yet Moshe smoked the rock twice. Something Yahweh never actually commanded. So let's find out on Numbers chapter 20 verse 12. But Yahweh said to Moshe and Aaron, for you did not trust me that I might be regarded as kadosh or set apart by the sons of Israel. What does this mean? If you read the whole context, like 10, 11, and 12, you will see that Moshe got upset. He did rock twice. And what happened here? Yahweh said, why do you, in other words, disrespect me? And let me give you a midrashim, a parable. It's like a king that the servant disrespected him twice. They were together alone with no one around, but he disrespect the king once, and the king forgive him. He disrespect the king again alone with no one around, and he forgive him twice. But this third time, this disrespect, the king was in front of the whole kingdom. And the king this time will not forgive him. He will punish him. And exactly what happened here. Moshe did this in front of everyone. And that's what he says very clear. You not regard me as kadosh, as set apart by the sons of Israel. Is something that we have to understand when it comes to respect or fear, so you understand what I'm saying, to Yahweh Sevaot, our Creator. Let me tell you the other flip side of this, of why Moshe did not enter. But first, let me give you a few verses of why the Mashiach has a lot to do with this. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 28. So also Mashiach, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, he will appear the second time not to deal with sin. Why? Because he needed to do it only one time, and that was in the first century when he came to us in the 4th millennium or the 4,000 millennium. He was only needed to do it one time, that's it. Not many times. Moshe did it twice. Do you see that? Romans chapter 6 verse 10, his death was unique. Do you see that? An unique event that does not need to be repeated. It says very clear, the scriptures does not need to be repeated. Book of Deuteronomy, let's look the other flip side of this, why Moshe did not enter. There is another reason why. Chapter 3 verse 26, but Yahweh Waethanan means was angry with me because of you. Do you see that? Because of you. And he didn't listen to me. Yahweh said to me, and not for you saying not another word to me about this matter. And the reason why he did not listen to Moshe is because we have to understand this word that it's in Hebrew, and we're going to compare, we'll make a comparison with another word. But this word, Wa'it Aber, is translated as was angry. But in reality, this Wa'it Aber does not mean was angry. There is another reason why this is written this way. Let's find out. But let's find out why Moshe is unlike Mashiach. Book of Deuteronomy 18:18. I will rise up for them a prophet like you, Moshe, from another of their brethren. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them whatever I commanded them. You see how this Moshe was going to come in the future, and he will be our Mashiach Yahushua. See that? He needed to do the same as Moshe did. So let's compare. But first, the word Wa'it Aber is translated as was angry. Let's find out a little bit more. Chapter 13, verse 11 of Hebrews, because of the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest brings the blood of animals to the Kadosh HaKadoshim, or the most set-apart place, as sin offering, but their bodies are burned outside the camp. The reason why I bring all these verses is for you to understand that the same as Moshe was doing in the serving Yahweh, serving the people, serving as Kohen HaGadol, as high priest, our Mashiach was going to perform the same way. Same pattern as Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 9 says, that what it was, it will be again. The history repeats itself. Very clear as daylight. Chapter 13 verse 12 of Hebrews, so also Joshua suffered death outside the gate to separate the people by his own blood. You see how the same was every performance, every sacrifice, every deed that was done with our fathers as far as offering and anything on the Mishkan or the tent of the meeting or the temple was related to our Mashiach. Psalms 89 verse 38, but you despise your Mashiach, your anointed one. You rejected him and vented your fury on him. Who is he referring to? He's definitely not referring to David or David. He's referring to our Mashiach. Who? The Father. Yahweh. Look at what it says about Yahweh to the Mashiach. What the Mashiach was going to do. 53 verse 4 of Isaiah, surely he bore our diseases. Verse 5, he was wounded because of our sins. So what is the role of our Mashiach? And what is the role of Moshe? Let's pause here for a moment. Let's start with Moshe. The role of Moshe is to be a mediator between Yahweh and the people, or the people and Yahweh. What is the role of Mashiach? It's the same thing. Mashiach said it with his own words, no one comes to the Father but through me. Moshe was doing the same thing. Remember, and this is now on my slides, remember when our forefathers sinned in the mountain Sinai? And Moshe had to go up into the mountain, and he said, quote unquote, I will go up to see if I can redeem you. You see that? He was acting as a mediator, as a Mashiach. Mashiach, our Mashiach, he's doing the same thing. He's doing the same as a mediator, mediating for all of us, for Israel. For 53 verse 10 of Isaiah, however, he pleaded Yahweh, do you see that? To break him, to sickness to see if he will represent himself as a sham, as a guilt offering. Here we see very clear that Mashiach had to do this, but Yahweh pleaded, it was pleased to Yahweh to break him. That's why it coincides with the book of Psalms, which is read, that he despised him. To whom? Mashiach. Why? Because he offered himself. In other words, Mashiach offered himself to be the present to Yahweh, the offering to Yahweh, the asham, the guilt offering. Now let's look at this word, abed. The Hebrew feminine noun Rapha'Yah or Averah is a transgression or sin against men or Yahweh. The word comes from the Hebrew root ayim, bet resh, which means to pass or cross with the implicit meaning or transgression from a moral limit. An averah can be trivial or serious. All this means is that no matter what, this word implies more than what we read on the text itself, either in English, Spanish, or any other language translation, which means there's something behind this word that we need to find out. Another meaning of this verse could be this: Yahweh was angry with me, insisting that I die before crossing the Jordan for your sake, so that I will be eventually become your, what does it say at the end? Your Redeemer. In other words, it's exactly what we see here. We see very clear that Moshe acted as a redeemer to the people. Why? Because he was always mediating for the people, always in behalf of the people, always. Remember that every time they sinned, what the Moshe did, he was always pleading to Yahweh not to destroy our forefathers, to the point where Moshe said, erase me from the book of life. Do you remember what he said when they sinned with the golden calf? And yet he was pleading in behalf of us, in behalf of our forefathers. Mashiach is doing the same thing. So this word, abar, is to trespass. Please write it down. Transgress, to go through, to transmit. You see that? The word abar, also there comes the word ibri, which is Hebrew. Do you see that? Amazing. Let's find out a little bit more. The book of Devarim, Deuteronomy 1:37, also for your sake, Yahweh was enough. Do you see that? Here we can clearly see that the word enough means to be angry. In the other verse that we saw, it says very clear that it does not say enough. It says abar. See that? Totally different. Here the word means angry with me. You said that would not enter either. The word enough clearly says it means to be angry. Let's look at another word so you understand that we're not making this up. Chapter 1, 21. But Yahweh enough was raged with me because of you. And swore that would not cross the Jordan to go through the good earth which Yahweh Yil Almighty is giving to you to inherit. Do you see that? He was angry, but in the other verse that we read in the very beginning, it does not say enough. It says something else. It says because Moshe will become as a redeemer, in other words. It is super brilliant how the Torah, how Yahweh speaks to us in a very encoded way. Let's look at another word. In the 13 attributes of Yahweh. Look at what it says here. Yahweh, chapter 34, verse 6 of Exodus, Yahweh, Waya Abor, passed before him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, Ayil, Rahum, Waethanan, slow to anger, rich in chesed, or favor, resignation, compassion, and truth, admit. The word Yabor means pass. You see that? Very clear as we go through. Chapter 17 verse 2, if anyone be found among you within the gates, in the gates of any city that Yahweh your Almighty has given you, a man or a woman, that's what Yahweh his Ayil sees as a wicked. And look at what it says, as a transgressing. The word is abhor. His covenant. You see that? Somebody who's transgressing, a transgressor, in other words. Here it says very clear in this verse in Psalms 106:32, they outraged him in the waters of Meribah, and Moshe suffered in their account. Once again, we see over one verse, in another verse, in another verse, that Moshe suffered because of the people. He became as a Mashiach, whether we admit it or not. He became the Redeemer, in other words, of our fathers in the wilderness. The word Abariam means a criminal. You see that? A criminal. No wonder why, if we flip the word Abariam and we flip it backwards, the word becomes La Arob. La Arob, if we flip it backwards, it means a guarantor, a guarantee. And look at what it says, because it's all related, brothers and sisters. The word Arab means to intruder, to give a safety, a staple, intermix. Okay, so let's find out. Look at what Mashiach becomes at this point of time. 7 verse 22 of Hebrews, these two shows how much better is the covenant by which Yahushua is guarantee or guarantor. He is the one who guarantees the berit, the covenant that he's making between Yahweh and us. In other words, without our Mashiach, and I want to make it clear when I say this, without our Mashiach, we become nothing. Without our Mashiach, we are surely nothing. We have to understand the merits of our Mashiach. A lot of people don't understand why is it that we don't acknowledge our Mashiach as Mashiach of Israel. I just don't get it, to be honest with you. And yet, people love to mock him and to take him for granted. It shouldn't be like that. 2 Corinthians 5:21, Yahweh made this man who did not sin be an offering for our sin, so that in union with him we might share in the justification of Yahweh. In other words, he is the one making this happen. Without him, would not be redeemed, period. No matter how many sacrifice we make to Yahweh, that would not help. Definitely would not help. All this, what I can tell, is that we can see over and over and over again, one example after another example, that we surely should be dead. But because of the merit of our Mashiach, we are still alive and kicking, but whether we like it or not. Let's look at what it says here. Let me go back over here, brothers and sisters. Let me give you this verse or this example, Genesis 44:32 or Bereshit, because your servant himself guarantees, you see that? His safety. As said, if I fail to bring it back to you, I stand in front of you, then I will bear the guilt before my Father forever. See how the word guarantee is the word that we saw earlier, which is abor. Unbelievable how the scriptures are come alive when we read this. Galatians 3 verse 13, the Mashiach redeemed us from the curse pronounced in the Torah, becomes pronounced in our place. For the Tanakh, the Hebrew scripture says, everyone who is hanged on the stake is under a curse. And let me explain this verse, which I think is very extremely important. The word curse and also the word hang by the tree, it means that our Creator have the Mashiach hang on the tree, on the stake, what they call it today, on the cross. If we understand why was he hanging there, is because he was not on earth, neither he was in heaven. He was hanging. He was neither one of them. Remember what Mashiach said in the book of Revelation? Because you're not hot or cold, I will spit you. See that? You're not anywhere. You're not cold, you're not hot, you're lukewarm. Mashiach becomes that in the eyes of Yahweh, not because he wanted to, it's because he offered himself in behalf of us. He offered to take the curse came up on him because of us. That's what it means. So we'll finish here, brothers and sisters. Hopefully our Creator can help us understand more and more of these Torah lessons, Torah teachings, and may the Creator Yahweh gives us the understanding to grasp a little bit more of the Torah every single Shabbat. Please subscribe if you have not, so you can get the latest production that we always working on, and may Yahweh bring about everything that is planned to do to all of us. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you next time.
Give us a like. Thank you. We'll begin.